should be going. Just gotta make sure. Alright, let's see, it is currently Saturday 11th August 2018, and well, I got a new computer, so things probably run a tad bit smoother, but remember, the internet's what really sucks. But you are listening to Disclaimers by Ed Johnston, and well, I'll just let Ed take it over and I'll keep working in the background.
Okay, thank you. We want to like joining us this evening. We do educational research, and we do education for people. We want to make sure that people get to know what the laws of administration are, and statutes, codes, and administrative rules versus the Constitution. And that's the one thing that most people do not comprehend, that when it comes down to it, when you go to like family court, so you're going in and you're using their words and you talk their words. So of course you're going to lose. You got to learn how to protect yourself, and you got to talk about your bloodline. And you got to talk, hey, that's my child, that's my property, that's my blood. You stole my personal property. See, this is the one thing that people don't comprehend. Everybody wants to argue, and everybody go, oh, I want my day in court. Well, you know, that's the one thing, if people really did pay attention, you really don't want to go with your issue to court. You want it handled before it goes to court. And if you go to court, you want a God-blasted 12-man and women jury trial that are not elected and public servants or contractors thereof. See, when you go to, and when I watched this, like the Finnegan court case, you know, they acquitted the cop that murdered him, which gets to me, which I tried to explain that to the people. First off, see if the judge has a constitutional oath before the court can start. Second off, make sure that the juries are not elected and public employees, because they vote for themselves. Come on, use your brain. Are you people that damn stupid? Because you do this to yourselves. You do it in real life. You know, when you go to make a decision, you make a decision that financially impacts you or what betters you. You don't sit there and do what people want, justice. You don't sit there and go, oh, well, I need to make sure that this man or woman is compensated for their loss. No, you guys don't. Some people don't care about that. They go by what they call a law, and it's like, you've got to comprehend. Is the law they're talking about a statute, code, administrative rules, an administrative rule that was written by the family courts, the corporation, some judge, some administrator, or some senator and congressman in a bill or a house they pass? Remember, when they pass bills, that's a bill to you to pay. That's why they call it a bill. And so that's the one thing that surprises me, that people don't comprehend how simple all this stuff really is when it comes down to it. Once you step out of the movie, watch the production, and all of a sudden the light goes off in your head. And I explain this to a lot of people all the time. I talk to people about their court cases all the time. I suggest things into their ideas that, you know, they didn't see something or they didn't think about that point of factual view. And that really does happen. I've done the same thing. That's why, you know, I put my stuff out at times where I ask people to go over it and, you know, see if I misspelled something. And I've had people say, you misspelled that word. And I'm going, no. That's not misspelled. Did you look it up and read the actual word, what it meant? Because sometimes people think misspelling words is because of the way they've been taught by English, by our structure of corporation thinking, instead of researching it, knowing what certain words actually mean, and especially in a court situation. Because everybody thinks, well, you know, the judge says this, or the judge might say that. And remember, a judge has no acting authority to make a decision. A judge, legally and lawfully, even under Article 1 Court, the British Administrative Court of Legislation, states they have to go by the Constitution and states clearly, you love this one, you know, they have to go by the Constitution, but also, too, they are mediators. They are not to be, what is that? Judging from the bench, being a judge from the bench. That's a federal crime. There's another judge that was just sentenced to life imprisonment recently, just last week, for, corruption, embezzlement, racketeering, fraud, basically human trafficking of children. So this is starting to become more and more enlightening, and people are catching on. They are getting this reality. But the one thing is, you've got to do your research. You know, everybody says, I want capitalism. Well, what is capitalism? Capitalism means I can rape, rob, and steal, and it's legal for me to do it. That's what it means. Look it up. You know, that means that you can put cons, and if you don't pay somebody or do your following of your obligation, then you're sitting there coming up with solutions how you can weasel out. Then you go have a lawyer that will go argue you a corporation. Because remember, either you are a living man or woman or you're a corporation. That's simple. And to be a man or woman living, you have to file for your rights on to be a man or woman living. If you don't file for your rights, you have no rights. See, this is how simple this stuff really comes down to it. We're not taught this stuff. We're taught to go to a Bible and pray. We're taught to go to a pastor or minister and ask advice from a man or woman that it wants to keep you in their system, because they know if you got out of that system and if you didn't donate your assets to the church or your land to the church or your children to the church wouldn't exist. Religion would be a failure. And I don't want to get into that for a second, because it's like this one thing has been all over Facebook and the internet. This one guy was a fireman and got fired from his job because he was out there preaching religion. He wrote a book on it. He brought it to work. He's making it known through the community. Well, that's his mistake right there. He's making it known through the community, and they went after him and said, oh, we don't want your religion. Well, you guys got to figure this out sometime in your life. When you're on a job or when you're out and about, people don't want to talk religion. They don't. Who cares? Religion comes from a foreign country. It's not American. Yes, I just said it. Yes, that's a fact. It's a foreign corporation. When you will become a minister or a pastor or whatever you want to call them, which I am registered as one myself, but when you start realizing the 501c3 corporation and the screwiness of what goes on, you start realizing the truth of what's going on, how the con game works. How it's all a con. And so this is the one thing that we get frustrated with, the circumstances, because, see, when you're not getting proper education, see, we never got proper education. You know, I was lucky enough in the 1980s was the last year they taught civics. Literally taught civics in my school in California. Was the last year. And they taught us the separation of, democracy and republic. If you wanted to be a republic, not Republican, because I came from the Republic Party that was incorporated. But if you wanted to be republic, free, man, blood right of your Constitution, woman of your Constitution. And remember, man and woman have to own and claim their child. Because if you don't own and claim your child and follow that process to own your child, the state can take your child anytime they want. And that means the state agrees with your opposing partner, whatever they want to do. And they do that, and then people get upset because they don't read the law. Then they get upset, and all these people are going out there, we need new children's laws. We need new circumstances. It's like, folks, if you actually would open your eyes and read it, the laws are there to protect your children and to protect you. The Ninth Circuit Court in California, January this year, came out and stated that DHS and anybody needs a warrant to take your child. So that means if you are in a custody battle, that means there has to be a warrant issued for that child to claim the custody of it. Otherwise, if there's no warrant issue and there's no structure of that, and you don't get a certified, notarized copy, especially on the judgment from the judge that that child's yours, which I recommend that people do get a certified copy and do this type of follow-through. And some people say, well, that's overkill. You don't need to do all that. Well, when people tell you that, be scared of those type of people, because those people are not in your best corner or your best friend. Because this is the one thing that you want to have a friend in your corner. You want to have somebody that is standing by your side. And so when you don't have somebody standing by your side, and it's really hard when you're doing a custody battle, and I can't speak on that because personally I've never gone through that. But I know personally what I would have done in some situation like that if it was my blood. And trust me, if I went through a situation like that, you know, the courts would not like me because I would be going after the judge if the judge was not viewing his administrative rules. But remember, recent years, they changed administrative rules on us, so that way you didn't get a 12-man jury anymore. You got a 6-man and woman jury. And so that's where I'm coming from with elected and public employees. I believe they should not and shall not vote because they're voting for their decision, their structure, their paycheck. Come on, you would do the same thing. I mean, come on. You know, you're going to vote for the general public so that way they have more rights and freedom? Hell no. You're going to sit there and vote so you get more in your paycheck. You know, that's the one thing that stuns me, how people bullshit other people so much. You know, on those types of circumstances. I didn't vote for that. I didn't do that. Well, I don't vote. I'll tell you right up because, see, and people say, well, if you don't vote, then you'd have no right to bitch. Well, yes, I do have a right to bitch for all those liberal, stupid, uneducated, terrorist people. You know, my opinion does matter. I don't give a darn if I have a right to vote or not, because the other point is, see, I'm a lawful bloodline American. I have rights. Legal immigrants and immigrants, illegal immigrants, have no rights, period, by law. It's like, that's the one thing. These Democrats over the last 25 years have really altered the history books and really altered stuff. Now, back in 2005, when they did the Paper Reduction Act. When they were doing the Paper Reduction Act, folks, I got to tell you the truth here. When they were doing that, they were throwing all your classified files out in the trash. Because in that way, there was no evidence to prove anything. Oh, paper reduction, so we have to throw everything in the trash. And I watched that up at the state of Oregon, in the Capitol, watching people throwing historical paperwork in the trash. And that's the one thing. Your senators and congressmen, when they do these writings of bills and administrative rules, they have to keep their notes. They have to keep everything. There's nothing supposed to be secret about anything they do. They don't have rights. Because remember, when they became a public servant, if they were a lawful bloodline American, they gave up their rights for a commercial paycheck. That's the Banking Act of 1933. You see, all these public employees got a paycheck. So, and that paycheck is supposed to be traded basically dealing with commerce on the corporation side, not on the private side. Not a we the people structure. And that's the one thing that people want to argue. They don't get that. They don't sit there and get the reality. They want to argue about tidbits instead of grasping, okay, well, my kid was taken. My ex is treating it this way. Now, how do I go about writing the paperwork? First off, if you don't put that you're a corpus delicti, Title 18, 3711. I'm not saying that one right. I'll get that one right here in a minute. I'll come back to that. But when you're not putting the correct paperwork in, you know, that is the one thing that these courts know it. These attorneys know it. They don't care because the attorney works for the court system. And if you don't get that point, the bar is registered to the King and Queen of England. August 27, 1878, the Bar Association. Read their administrative rules. All attorneys are registered to the British government. They're not American. They're legislative courts. So once you start putting these pieces together and you start comprehending that, all right, these courts are not the way I were led to believe or brought up they were, then all of a sudden you start coming to a different place in life. You start realizing that you're living in Disneyland World. And the truth starts coming out. You don't have to be afraid anymore. You don't have to be afraid of the circumstances, Oh, I have to call an attorney. I have to call somebody else because I cannot figure it out. I can't think on my own. I can't do it on my own. And basically, when it comes down to it, none of us could do it on our own. That's why we ask for opinions and advice. But we're supposed to take the best opinion and advice. Not what sounds good. What, actually is the law, administrative code, or the structure of what we're dealing with at the time. And see, that is the one thing that most people do not get this point. And because we don't get this point, this is where we end up losing cases, losing our children. And it makes me wonder when people go through this, when they lose their children, especially in a custody dispute, how come they don't think these things? I've talked to many, many people, males and females, gone after them and asked them court cases and asked them how this happened. And they're like, well, I don't know how that happened. And I'm like, did you do this? Did you do that? Did you speak up? Well, and I've had people tell me when they were making a decision, and I said, didn't you speak up? And they said, well, no, they already made their decision, so what does that matter? It matters because you didn't speak up, because that's how they got away with it, because you didn't sit there and speak up on it. You didn't claim your bloodline. You didn't claim your structure of that blood, of that personal property. And remember, that property is 50-50. But when you're going through a custody battle, that's the one thing that people forget when they fall in love, that they're supposed to be equal. I'm not talking what the Bible crap says. I'm talking men and women with common sense and reality. When you're forming a relationship bond, you're supposed to be equal to one another. Because that's the one thing I do not agree with the Bible, where the woman is beneath the man. And then everybody bitches because the Muslims have their women walk behind them. Well, shit, that's what the Bible does. Come on. Read this damn thing. Quit interpreting things. Quit, when you're reading stuff in that book, quit interpreting and changing it in your own mind. That is the problem that we have today. People want to change these things. And some things you can't change. And I mean, it's like you can't change your DNA. You cannot change your circumstances to the circumstances of the child that you're dealing with. Either you're dealing with things in a realistic point of view, and sometimes I know the main part, even for men too, emotions. We know how emotion it is. We know the psychological and stress points of these things. Yes, they are extremely hard, extremely difficult to deal with. And jump off on that one. I'll get back to that in a minute. But I get so frustrated with people on taxes that are whining. Read the damn tax code for once. Open the damn thing. The only ones who are obligated by law to pay any taxes, state, federal, any taxes, except for commercial taxes that are across the board that are mandatory in prices. Taxes are voluntary. We know that for a fact. We have actually proven that for a fact. I've proven it for a fact myself personally. So when people get out there and they get off on these tangents and stuff, They're not paying attention to the reality of what's going on. That is the saddest part of all this stuff. You know? I mean, the real sad part is that people ain't protecting their families, their children. And a big problem that we have that basically came 20 years ago in the 1990s. Oh, everybody's got to have fun. So everything's supposed to be fun. All the TV shows started doing all this fun stuff, getting away from proper education. Oh, the kids don't need education. They need fun more than they need education. They're supposed to enjoy their childhood. Okay, they enjoy their childhood, and then they become adults, and they have no knowledge of the checking and banking system, how it works realistically. They never read the administrative rules, the statute codes of the banking structure. They have no knowledge how to... Go ahead. Oh, okay. But they have no knowledge of the banking system. And the same thing as the banking system runs off of fairy tales, the same thing that your court does. That's why I always recommend a movie called Interstate 60, and I demand you watch it. Because when you watch that movie, it does explain your court system, the federal fraud, the federal bullshit, the whole crap on it. See, that's what stuns me, amazes me about people. How they don't get what's in front of their face when it's in front of their face. But then they want to go bitch and moan and groan, and then when they put it in front of their face, I've had people saying, well, and the one thing that I've had several people say to me, that's not the way it should be, and that's not the way it's supposed to be. Well, then tell me how it is. Well, then they can't tell you what they feel is supposed to be, and they can't argue the terms. See, that's what you want. You want people to, if you're going to be in a situation like that, especially in a custody battle, you got to do the research. I mean, it's interesting to watch what's going on with Alex Jones right now. Everybody's pulling him off for his tax and stuff, but some of this stuff, I do agree to a point. He does get a little carried away. Dramatic. But dramatics are fine, because women do it all the time to us. But when it comes to when you're playing to a national audience like that, you don't want dramatics. Excuse me for a second. You don't want dramatics. You want facts. You want truth. You don't want people to go whining and crying and doing all these other things that people do. Especially when you go to court. You think a judge is going to take emotions because you're sitting there doing that? Well, female might, but males, most of the time, because that's the point. Some of these women get upset because the men end up with the children and they don't. Well, it's arguing your circumstances in court before you get there. Your attorneys are going to tell you, oh, no, don't do it that way. I've had attorneys that tell people, hey, stay away from that Johnston guy. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's going to get you more trouble. Well, we've been successful in getting a few kids back even after the fact. But the point being is that when you want to listen to an attorney who works for the British Auxiliary Registry to the King and Queen of England, who's not an American, because when you become an attorney, you give up your lawful constitutional rights as an American to become a foreign agent of the 1938 Foreign Administration Registration Act. And if you don't register, it's a federal crime. That includes immigration and children. Because all these people think, oh, immigrations have all these rights. No, I hate to tell you, no, immigration has no rights whatsoever. The only rights immigration has when it comes down to it is as long as that you're legal in this country and you pay all your tax fees and debits. And then when you become 5 generations, then you become lawful. And that's part of the 14th Amendment, if you actually read it. And I've argued with many people going, oh, immigrants have more rights because of the 14th Amendment. No. Including, read the Dred Scott case. Has never been overturned. You become a citizen. A citizen is a foreign agent of a foreign corporation. This is what it comes down to. It's a foreign administration. And so it's comprehending, putting all these pieces together that we weren't taught in history. And the saddest part about it, they actually teach you a lot of this stuff on TV. But people don't pay attention to it. Oh, they can't arrest you without a warrant, then they arrest you. Technically, they can't arrest you without a warrant. A warrant has to be signed by a grand jury. Judge could only do that in emergency procedure, life and death situation. But it has to be backed up by a signed affidavit by a man or woman or the injured party. It cannot be signed by a district attorney, a judge, or anything like that. An affidavit has to be signed by the injured party only. That's federal law. See, that's what stuns me, how people go, oh, we got state laws. Your state laws do not supersede federal laws. I just want to make sure you clarify that. Because once you start clarifying these things and comprehending these things and knowing these things, you're not going to be behind the ball anymore. You're going to be ahead of the game. Because it's like interesting deal. It's like, when it comes to like Alex Jones, it's one of those frustrating points with him. That's the one thing. I expected to be on a guest on a show a couple years ago. We opened up a deal. He ran off with a lot of my stuff that I put in and wrote, dealing with rights of travel and stuff. But I don't give a darn when it comes down to that stuff. When it comes down to it. I've had many people run off with my ideas, and even some of my patents would piss me off because they made millions of dollars and never came back and, with kind. And that's what you're supposed to do. When somebody helps you out, you're supposed to be at least kind back to them. It's not all about you, and me in the mirror. It doesn't work that way. And once you sit there and start putting all these things together in the puzzle, and you start putting these pieces together, you start realizing that, the whole thing is a scam. That's why I tell you, I suggest to you, because I can't tell you anything. You're an adult. You're supposed to do things on your own as an adult. And that's what I encourage you, to do things as an adult. But when people sit there and they want to basically whine or complain, and they don't get the law or the statute code or administrative rules, they don't get that if it applies to them or not. They don't comprehend that maybe it doesn't apply to them. That's the one thing, Wow. That's the one thing that you've got to step out of this movie and watch the production. When you go to that court, you always have to try to think what the judge is going to think before you think. Because if you're not going to a court that is a constitutional Article 3 court, and you are definitely in the Article 1 court of corporation law that gives you no rights whatsoever, because when you walk into the courtroom, it's like I had a military gentleman tell me when I asked for the structure on the military flags. He clearly stated the minute you walk in that courtroom, that gold fringe flag, you give up your rights at the door. And he's right. You're walking in, you're giving your rights over to that judge. You're not giving that rights over to anybody else. You're giving your Constitution, freedom, rights, and your words and everything over to that man or woman until they can make a decision of that child or that decision of your personal life and what you're going to do. Exactly what you're doing. And see, that's the saddest part about all this stuff we are living. That's the saddest part. We're all sitting there trying to improve things for our families. Or people around us if we don't have actual families. But if we do, we're trying to improve that. And when the thing you don't realize is that when you're trying to prove stuff with your family, you have to know the administrative rules, you have to know the laws, you have to pay attention. It ain't all about fun, and I can just sit on my video game and I don't have to sit there and pay attention to the reality of what's going on in the world. Well, I agree with you on that one. Some video games are good. I don't know. I haven't done video games since the 80s myself, because all I do is research. And it's like, it is interesting when people sit there and they want to not pay attention, but then they want to go to somebody else to have them fix and solve their worldly problems, what they caused themselves. Maybe they didn't cause it themselves. But that's the point. It doesn't matter who caused what, why, or how. The situation is, how do you solve the issue? Well, it's like the one thing we do have on New.org and Trackers dealing with the children issue. Own your bloodline. File an affidavit. Claim that child is yours. And if your child's under 18, file on that birth certificate, and you want the police department and you want the state attorney general and the police department of your state to prove that they own that child, not you. You know, we basically wrote up a hell of a deal on that, gave people the real IDs and real structure over it, the real laws. So that way you get to comprehend. It's like, you know, William Jefferson Clinton says that children are human capital. The state owns it. That's what Hillary Clinton was going to be doing if she got elected, would have signed your children in this country over the Queen of England. And I know people are that stupid to believe, oh, she wouldn't do that. Jesus Christ, I know how stupid people are, because they don't research the woman. They don't know what she's totally done to the other children. She's had so many children that were raped, released, and the guys are released from custody, and allow the women and children to be raped. Because she's that type of woman. She's into that, actually. Do your research. Listen to what goes on. This has been going on in the media for 35 years with Hillary Clinton. This goes all the way back to, I don't know, Watershed Council. This goes up in, Whitewater. This is the one thing, you know, her husband and they own part of all that corporation. That was the structure that was going on. And they bought off the media to do that. And it's very simple, because the media will do anything when it comes down to it most of the time. Because they're afraid of losing their business license or their subscribers, their positions of financial income. And it's sad that we live in a day and age that we're more worried about our income and what's going on around us than we are worried about the children in lives. We're not even worried about the trees going away, no food, no deer, no salmon, no vegetables in the wild to eat anymore. Cities have been chopping down fruit and vegetable trees around their cities for the last 20 years. Prior to that, all cities and parks and schools and everybody had apple trees, fruit trees all around their schools, because if a kid ever got hungry, there was food right there. See, that's the one thing that, you know, our forefathers thought about these things. They paid attention to these things a hell of a lot more than we do today. We got all these people that come from foreign countries that don't even know how to survive, can't even know how to sew. They wouldn't know how to sew their own pants if they got ripped. You know, that's the saddest part about today. Most kids don't even know what the hell a sewing needle is. Sewing machine. They don't know how to knit or crochet. I mean, that's the one thing, you know, once it's been so long since I've done either one of those. I used to do that with my grandmother, knit and crochet with her. So these are things that, you know, we don't look at, we don't appreciate, we don't take advantage of for our rights. And it doesn't matter if you're an immigrant. You know, you have a right to life, but also, too, in this country, you have a right to administrative rules the way we dictate to you, not the way you come from your country and think it is. See, we're not here for you to come to our country to have a plush life and an easy life and all this structure, as all these Democrats have done, especially the last terroristic president we had, Obama, did. It was just as bad as Jimmy Carter opening up the floodgates so you get all those federal funding notes coming in. And if you know what federal notes are, that's paper money that comes from the Treasury, and that's basically from England, because you're using English money from the United States Treasury. Is what it really is. If you go back in history before they put the Federal Reserve in, money was gold and silver or barter. You know, way back then, you traded ammunition for medicine, or you traded ammunition for whatever it was that you needed, you know. Now today, we don't do any of this. It's just like crazy. We don't have respect for our children today. You know, they're treated like cattle. And some cattle ranchers treat their cattle better than their cattle are treated better than most of the kids today. But that's the one thing that you've got to make your own logical, rational decision on, not choice. Choice became a big deal in the 1990s. That was all started by the Democratic Party. You have the right to a choice of this. I have a right to a decision, because I'm in a decision. That means you have to be responsible. It's like my decision right now. I'm finally starting after 3 weeks. I've been telling everybody I've been doing this. But I had to go through it a few times. I wanted to make sure it was done to the best of my liability. And that's what it is when I'm putting this affidavit out on the sheriff's departments. And then we'll go to the city council. Each legislator will be served one, too. And then I got to look at, then once I do that, you know, I want to get the paperwork and get that file. Excuse me. Start going after them. But you have to get the knowledge. I mean, I've had to take 30 years of research and knowledge to get where I am with my knowledge today. And that means even taking bumps and bruises along the ways, which I've done. But, you know, that's part of the tactics. And that's what you have to be familiar with, is learning how the life really works compared to the way the fantasy we've been brought up to believe in. You know, it's like we're all waiting for the unicorn to show up. Well, you know, that's a good one. We'll see what happens with that one. But also, too, it's like the same thing. We'll all see when a white buffalo shows up. Or we'll see when a white bear shows up. Or black bear that's not a black bear, but it's a white bear. I mean, you know, we got a lot of things out there, and we're all too busy making judgment calls without stepping back and thinking before we speak. Oh, trust me, I'm just as guilty as that. I mean, there's been times where I speak where I don't think, and I put my foot in my mouth pretty severely. And I know that. And that is a fact. And I do know that for a fact. And so when it comes down to these things, this is the point that you want to research. Do your stuff when it comes down to your children. Like I said, if you do go on new.org and trackers, we do actually have information on it. We have the laws. We have the laws where the state and federal government says each state agency owns that child unless you own it. When that child's born, you have 30 days to claim that bloodline. Then after that, you have to go after the state for them to have relinquished that right back to you. But you have to go after the state to own your child. That means an affidavit, filing on the state, and going after them. I mean, it's that simple. See, that's what stuns me, how, you know, I mean, and it stuns me more now because, I mean, I've been in some people's shoes where, you know, I've been there beating my head against the wall, trying to come up with this, the one, that knowledge, this fact, that reason, that why, and been there just like a lot of other people. But then when I started stepping back and I started opening my mind and started not judging or thinking, what would God do? Why would I go put an imaginary situation in place? Instead of saying, what would God do? What would I do? What would I do? What would I do to solve the problem? See, that is the one thing that you got to do, that is to solve your problems. Now, there's one lady that's going through a heck of a case dealing with her court case. You know, that's what I said. You know, read this stuff. Learn this stuff. You want your kids back. Learn how to beat the man at his own game. Psychological trauma is a great thing that men and women do to each other. Been doing it for generations. And so when they get them beat down, they got control over them. And then when people have no control and they're down and their back's against the wall, then they go, oh, pray for help. Okay, I get the meaning of prayer, and I get the meaning of the praise and all that stuff. But if you're going to stand up, that is the one thing that you need to start putting and knowing the laws how to stand up. Research it. When you go to court, make sure your judge is registered under the 1938 Foreign Administration Registration Act. You want to research his oath to see if he's got a real oath. Is his oath to the Constitution? Or is his oath to the British government? Because remember, after the Civil War, we do have two governments in this country. At one point, you know, they used to shoot the British on sight when they came off the boats in this country. At the end of the day, everybody's praising these people that wants their homes, their assets, their life. So that's the one thing. You don't comprehend what's going on in the real world. Most people are so been raised up on a TV set as their babysitters. And trust me, I know how that's been around. And you don't sit there and live in the real world. Some of these programs get you often thinking. But when you watch some of these old programs, they actually tell you about the corporation, the stuff in the movie or the TV program. And, you know, that was the one thing I watched. All these people will go around and say, well, Andy Griffin, you know, he never had a gun and he handled the town. Well, that was Mayberry and make-believe land. Because most men in that position, it might be public, it might be concealed, but most of them will have an armor on them. Because they're not foolish enough to walk out in the street blind when they're sitting there flashing and saying, you know, I'm involved in the commercial industry, and so I'm looking at this is what I can do. See, it's simple when it comes down to this stuff. And people say, well, Ed, you keep saying it's simple. Where is the simple? Where is the you know? It ain't simple. Once you start putting the pieces together on these things, it becomes simple. Sometimes the legal language is the most difficult, because remember, legal language is Babylonian Babel, and that's how they got it. The original Black Law Dictionary was written as a joke by attorneys from the Court of England, and then people started referencing it, and then all of a sudden they started going, holy shit, that's something to do now. And you think about it, what has it done to you, or our country? Especially in our country when we got a foreign religion we're believing in, instead of the religion that's in our country. You know, Mother Earth, you know, the Great Spirit, Mother Earth. Without Mother, you have no food, you have no life, you have nothing. Same with the Great Spirit. The Great Spirit gave you life. The Creator is all around us in that fashion. But it is depend on how you look at these things. So I wanted to get into this structure of the deal tonight, going, how are you going to defend yourself? You know, if you want your child, how are you going to be able to do the research to educate yourself on your child? See, everybody goes, I'm going to go hire an attorney. They're going to do the job. Like I told you, attorneys work for the British court system. They don't work for you. They're not your friends. I know, I've been 40 years. I've had many attorneys that have been my friends and I worked with on different issues. And next thing I know, when shit hit the fan, I was expendable. And that is the one thing, is that you've got to start putting that together of what you're going to do. How are you going to do the case? How are you going to handle the case? How are you going to prepare your case? How are you going to do the research on this stuff? especially if it's your bloodline, because you want your bloodline. And so you're liable for your bloodline. That's your mommy, that's your daddy, you know, especially if it's your child. That's your bloodline. I'm not talking adoption. I'm talking about when the woman gives born that child to the earth to breathe. And by U.S. Code 1, Section 8, a child is not alive until it takes a breath of fresh air. That's how they do it. You're not a child. The woman owns that body. The woman owns that child until that child's born. Not saying the man and your religious belief. Your religious belief is a belief. The owner is a different structure. The woman carried that child. The woman delivered that child. And so, yes, the man does have rights, but also, too, he cannot go against his woman. And that is the one thing that most people forget. You know, I mean, and I've had women that have been very interesting in relationships, as we all have, or men. It depends on which side you are. I'm not talking the other deals. Talking realistic. Because like I said, I don't believe in the other structure. That is something you're not born that way. It's something you're programmed, and they know that. That's why they're doing it to the children today. With the programs and classes. And you don't want your children in those classes. I'll guarantee you that one. You get your children in those classes, and then you're going to wonder why that kid is all mentally screwed up when it grows up. You insured it. That's the sad part. People insure these things on their bloodline, on their children, on their circumstances. It's because of what you provide to them in education, reading, TV, people around them. You know, if you're in this big city, you got the city around you compared to the woods, the outdoors. Different education and training taught when you're out in the outdoors than it is when you're in the woods. Definitely different than when you're in the city. I grew up in a concrete jungle. I know that. It wasn't until I was about 11 years old when I left the city of San Francisco. We moved up north when I realized the Golden Gate Park was not the National Forest. Because I've seen things on TV, but I know and I could smell and I could feel when I was at the Golden Gate Park compared to what was on TV or what I thought. And then I started, when I was growing up, I started learning more and more about the real world compared to what I was seeing on TV. And I had to step back at times to make a rational analyzation of what was going on around me. You know, the way I look at it, in some situations, I was blessed in the way I grew up. You know, and anybody who had free-range parents, we could all say that. We used to play outside, climb trees. We weren't afraid to get hurt. Today, a kid gets a splinter, he's crying. We used to fall out of trees, and we'd get up and go, oh, shit, let's do it again. That was fun. Some of us broke bones, some of us didn't, you know, but some of us got lucky, some of us didn't. But that's what we're facing in life. We're dealing with this. And so this is the one thing that when you come to these conclusions, especially when you are making these decisions, and if you are filing a child custody case for your child, file and own your bloodline first. Because when you're going into court, remember these Article 1 courts, legislative courts, so they have to go by statute, codes, and administrative rules. That's their guideline, is that, not the Constitution. Constitution is a reference point. That's all it is. The judge will tell you, it's just a reference. Unless you put them on the spot to handle your case lawfully, not legally, statute, codes, and administrative rules. See, when it comes down to all this stuff, and you step out of the production of a movie, that's why these attorneys, work for the court system, because they're guaranteed. These practicing attorneys, every time they get a court case, you get a drunk driving case, you get a traveling without a license case, you get a case that, you tripped over a rock and you fell through somebody's property, and wait a minute, that is a case. That's, if you do property damage, that's personal property damage. You're liable. But when you haven't caused personal property damage under Corpus Delicti, Title 18, 3771. When you haven't caused personal property damage, and this is in the affidavit that I just put out we'll have finished out this weekend, to the sheriffs in all 36 counties in Oregon. Started putting it out earlier today, and I've been fighting my computer for some reason. But I got one of them out. I'm getting more that are going to go out. I'm going to get 36 out for every county. And it states in it, Corpus Delicti even quotes Oregon State Administrative Rules where the law says you don't need a license and registration, including the letter from Legislative Council to the Senate and House says you don't. And so that letter that I got from Dexter Johnson is actually in the letter to all 36 counties, cities, states. Because after I do the sheriff, I'm going to hit the city mayors and councils. I'll be hitting legislators too. And I want them to approve. We got these public servants out there. And, I call elected and public servants when they are actually doing the constitutional oath of their employment public servants. But when they're not, they're treasonous traitors. When they're out there arresting everybody so that way their paycheck goes from $75,000 to $80,000 a year up to $150,000 because their arrest rates. And remember, they do have arrest quotas. They do have ticket quotas. That's a fact. Remember when you hear this, they don't, and the cops will tell you, we don't, they're bullshitting. I've seen it. I've been around it. I've been around conversations with it, being involved with elected and public officials. It's real. But the whole point with that is they're supposed to be going after code breakers. That's the job of a public servant, policeman. Or a sheriff. Sheriff and police are not supposed to come to your home and basically steal your property, and that's either your child, your car, your property, sheriff sales, mortgage fraud, and all the other crap. Hey, when it comes down to all this, the solutions are there, but it depends on how people want to listen to the solutions. And if they don't want to listen to solutions, there's not much you could do for them. Yes, it does come overwhelming when it comes to some reading, some of the circumstances of it. It does become overwhelming. I won't deny that fact. Because I've been there, several days on an issue where it overwhelmed me, where it clogged my head, and I couldn't think of anything else until I got that figured out. But that's life, and we all do that. Oh, that's right. They call that attention deficit disorder. What a crime. Attention deficit disorder is a joke. We all have it. Every animal, which you are, has it. You're driving down the road, you see a shadow in a corner. Next thing you know, oh, shit, it's something over there. That's attention disorder. You looked at it instead of looking forward where you were traveling or keeping your eyes sweeping the road. But when you lose your attention on that item for a few seconds or half a second as you're going by it, half a minute if you're going by it, that's when things happen. And that's what happens when children get theft. People, when you're listening to the signs around you and people are talking about different things, don't sit there and, say, it ain't going to do anything. They're not going to do this or that. Start doing your research. Put your affidavit together. Remember, a living man or woman can put an affidavit together. Okay? The corporation, a district attorney, state attorney general, they cannot put admissible evidence in the courts. Only by the injured man or woman. And that even comes from the man or woman that is the owner of that property, the child, to put it in. Now, if the kid has already been in the adoption agency and kidnapped and held for ransom, well, that becomes a liable party willing to take interest in that child. But if he's a corporation member, cannot go in as a corporation member. He has to go in, he or she has to go in as a living man or woman. And that's the one thing our courts don't do today. They just clump everything in. They're in it for the quick and easy. If they could get this kid in a court case in and out within a day or two or a couple hours, you know, they're making tens of thousands of dollars in those time. You figure every time a court is open, the court, the judge, the clerk, the administrator, the records clerk, the file and records clerk needs to be paid. All these people are on that paycheck. They're all getting that income. And when you can prove that they did it illegally, that's a crime. There's no immunity for judges. There's no immunity for elected and public officials, period. The only immunity that they can only get when it really comes down to something like that is a pardon from a president. Otherwise, there is no immunity for them. And when you watch how these people, these Democrats have gone after people here in the last 10 years, you know, going after people who are standing up for the Constitution because they're not going with capitalism, so that way they're not selling their souls out. They're not selling their heart out. They're not, you know, giving up their assets to some foreign corporation. And so that is the one problem we live. And so, and that is the one thing that when it comes down to, if the parent, or mother or father, has not claimed the paternity rights or the claim of that bloodline on that child is thrown up to the court to decide. And you leave the courts to decide that, and then people went and whine and cry when the courts decide it because you gave them the rights to decide it. You gave them the authority. And that is the one thing that is just so amazing what's going on. In our court cases, we have these things. We have the rights. When you give that child up, you give that child up. It's called abandonment. When you leave that hospital and within 30 days you didn't file ownership of that child, and by federal and state law, the state attorney general's office claims that deal. And that is the one thing that people have got to start realizing how these courts work. They are a domestic foreign court system under a foreign leadership, and that's going back to the Treaty of 1871 with the British government, we the people, that was signed by the Vatican. And we the people didn't sign that thing, the Congress did. So when people say, well, you're liable for the national and federal debt, no, I'm not. I never signed for it. I don't agree for it. I'm not a voter. I don't play in that game that says I'm a liable party. I never agreed to that contract. Well, your parents signed it. Well, I want to see my parents' wedding signature on a piece of paper stating that. There's a lot of solutions that we have right in front of us. How do we get from point A to point B? And you've been on the road making those decisions, and that's the decisions that we're making right now today, going through things. So this is the one thing of coming up with these solutions. So, I mean, there's a lot of court cases going on right now with children dealing with women, and it's like the first thing is get some of the knowledge underneath you to learn the court structure, to learn what, why, and how, you know. I mean, when your kid was taken by your spouse, what was the circumstances? What led up into it in a relationship? Remember, you both are going to be saying each one of you are pieces of whatever. Both of you are going after each other to slander each other. Not all everybody does it, but there are some out there who do it. Because, they didn't follow through on one of their promises or commitments. And that goes for male or female. And probably sometimes it goes more on the male side because males are more, that way, deviant, I guess, than some women are. But then us too, could be worse. But that depends on the circumstances. You can't just clump everything into one. Each case has to be done on an individual, and I hate using the word of individual, but it has to be done separately in a case. And that is the one thing, is that we've got the solutions. It's like everybody wants to, we need jobs. Well, okay, you need a job, but let's say there's a deer and elk out in the woods. Do you have food? Can you go out fishing without feeling like you're going into prison? Until what? Until in the state of Oregon, until the year 2000, there was no such thing as a fishing requirement license or anything. That I personally know. I went through the hearing, spot on it. I am a subsistence hunter and fisherman. I don't sit there and endorse their games. Yeah, the directors will tell you that in the House and Senate. Trust me. I mean, I know the senators and congressmen and the directors of the state of Oregon. These people know who I am around, especially with this letter I'm putting out to the sheriffs. And I put it out to the House and Senate. And everybody's going, well, you need to go sue them. No. See, this is the one thing that we, the people, got to stop playing this damn lawsuit game for these people to continue their employment. We just stop participating, stop paying the income tax, stop paying the federal tax, state tax. Once you stop participating in these, you're going to watch their funding goes down. You'll see how all of a sudden your rights will start coming back because they won't have all this money that they raped, robbed, and pillaged from you and I and our neighbors and everybody else to run their criminal organization off of you. I mean, people say, well, donate to the church, give to the church. No. When you see a down and out man or woman or child, you give to that, and you give that to man, woman, or child at the time. And in that way, and then people say, well, we give it to the taxes and the government pays it out. No, they don't. I've gone after their budgets in the state of Oregon. They've tried to actually assassinate me on it because I was getting too deep finding out where the money was going. And that is the one thing that they don't want the truth known. I mean, the city of where I live, they put on a road tax in the city water bill. They put in street lamp fees, so we're paying for the electricity bill. Where is the state budget? Where is the county budget? Where is the city budget? Where is the damn money? And everybody keeps going, they're broke. No, they're not. You lie. Because you got public employees out there who are making $150,000. The average public employee makes $70,000 a year today. And when they're making that, remember, that's under a federal debt note. That's under the Bankruptcy Act of 1933, March 9th. And remember, the British banks and the British government went bankrupt to you, the people. United States Incorporation is a corporation, went bankrupt. That was the British government, not of we the people. Come on, do your history. Read the real truth. Quit going on with these people that are claiming all this bullshit. And that's the thing that gets to me about it. All these people want to claim all this stuff, speak up on this stuff. Prove your evidence. Prove your facts out there. Bring the truth out. And I've been arguing with people on cases and stuff, and they're going, this is the way it is. And then we bring back and forth and start arguing back our cases. Oh, and that's the one thing, too. When you look at all the history of this stuff and you start stepping out of the movie and watching the production, you start comprehending this.
Hearsay bullshit.
There
Hearsay
you go.
bullshit.
That's right. And that is the one thing that, we're getting it out. We're getting tired of the hearsay bullshit. I'll get all these people say that, we can get you on 192 and we can get you so you're not paying your water or electricity bills and stuff. Well, I agree. I'm still doing the research. I know it's plausible. I know it's there. And I know it's real. And I've got the congressional records, even a certified copy from Library of Congress. But getting our public servants to do it, that is the one thing. Getting your public servants to do it. And as for, here's the other point, too. Somebody posted up here, that, children could be prosecuted of prescribed drugs and a cash cow for the system. Well, we already know that that's a cash cow for the system. Come on, look at what they were doing with ADHD and that bullshit with Ritalin and all the other crap, the brainwash, determine when you take a lot of those psychological drugs, they're mental drugs, and they kill your brain cells, they kill your thought patterns. And when you take those drugs for too many years, it takes you those almost that many years to get your mind back together. Because that stuff does really screw up your mind. It really, literally does. And so that is the one thing dealing with, the cash cow on the kids. But that comes under Title IV that William Jefferson Clinton passed. What was involved with Hillary Clinton. Especially he started that when he was governor of Arkansas. And so when people realize that this is such a cash cow, and we're living this crap from these people, and we are living this crap when it comes down to this stuff. We've got foreigners telling us how to live. I mean, come on, now we got Mayo Mexican Day. That's only happened in the last 15 years. Oh, yeah, we're going to celebrate a foreign country day. Oh, we're a country of diversity. No, we're not. We're a country of foreign immigrants that came into our country that want what American bloodline was born with, a contract free from religion, freedom. Religion does not give you freedom. Your mind and your knowledge gives you freedom. Religion doesn't give you freedom. I ask people all the time, religious on that. Show me the freedom. I've been through it myself, reading the histories and, books and all this stuff, including the Bible, which I got tired of reading another fairy tale book. Because we don't know when that book was written. Even if you go back in history, it even says that it was written 400 years after Christ, if there was the Christ. There's a lot of things that we've been put into the impression over the last 100 years, more so than our forefathers and ancestors have been. Because back then, most people, when you go back in history, not everybody had a Bible. Unless you were a foreigner that came into this country, and then everybody says, bye, 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 bye. Remember, we didn't have a depression in this country in the 30s, because, remember, we had all those immigrants that were coming over, illegal and illegal and illegal, and they're here, and they're eating off the land, and so they're taking away our food and our resources for ourselves and our grandchildren and our bloodline. Just because their country is doing what they're not protecting their children, their bloodlines or whatever, then people, you need to start standing up in your country. That is your liability. Say, it's your liability, not mine. I don't live in your country. It's not my responsibility. It's not my liability. And when you're living in our country, you have to go by our rules. Just because you came from a corner of the country and this is what you believe, that is one thing that is not okay. And so we got to think about these things of how we're going through these processes and stuff. So when you're going through your battle with your kid on the court cases, write up your affidavit on your bloodline. Do your research. Prove that you're 5 or more generations on this soil. Prove you're lawful American with Constitution rights, not privileges of an immigrant. Because immigrants have privileges. Americans don't. That's what the Democrats in the last 30 years have been molding in our thinking by TV programs, through education, raising us to believe that we're supposed to live the way that these foreigners live, or the way they came from their country. When they come from their country, hey, great. I don't care where they came from, so long as they do the legal process, and if they go by Constitution law. Constitution law clearly states, very, very simple, the people of its city, county, and state get to decide if that immigrant is allowed in their city, county, and state. That's the Constitution. It actually says it in the Constitution on immigration going back 1778. See, they thought about all this stuff going back to the 1700s when all these foreigners were coming over. And remember, the forefathers that ever keeps bitching about those forefathers were from a foreign country and they wrote this stuff. They wrote it from a religious point of view, that they knew where they came from and they knew that there was no freedom. Everybody went by a religion with no rights, and the Vatican decided if you lived or died. And that's what's going on today. You're still living this crap today. I'm still living this crap in some regards. But I mean, I'm putting this stuff together, putting the affidavits out. If you people want to use the affidavits, I don't care. You know, and if you do have kindness in your heart, you know, track us down. Send us a, you know, kind thought. You know, we don't mind taking gifts. You know, that's the one thing. I'm not into the personal gain. I'm into right now making sure the knowledge is out there to protect your bloodline, your children, your facts of life. See, I mean, the other point is, I could think about why the hell am I wasting my time? Oh yeah, I'll get into that one. Why am I wasting my time on some of these things when I don't have children? I've had people say, Ed, you don't have children. What the hell are you wasting your time doing this stuff? Go on and live your life. Who cares? Well, I have other people I know with bloodlines that I care. I care about for where I was born in and where I came. Okay, and don't forget, yeah, this comes all back from Roman law principle, in which the power, the meaning that no counter evidence can be made against the principle. So if the mother is the principle of life, no counterclaim could be made against that life that was born. It's like stepping out of a movie and watching these things. And if you're the mother that's going through this and you got an asshole that's the father of the kid, or vice versa, you know, read up on the law, file on the law, argue the points that of what, why, and how. Don't forget to bring the points in of which you did, raising that child. Did you educate that child? Did you teach them the alphabets? Did you work with that child to know that what's the difference of a palm tree, an apple tree? You know, educating that child so it knows life itself, to live life it is. Without the life it is, there is no life to live. See, that's the one thing that most people do not get this point. And that's the one thing that I did post up on the deal, because you got to remember that these people, you're terrorists, going by a foreign law, by Roman law, from another country, in your courts. And you're not comprehending. You come up with this because all you've been told is this is the Constitution, this is the right, but most people don't even know the Constitution, what it means. Most people can't even read the Constitution. Most people can't even know what any of them are. It has been entertaining for me to watch some of these past night shows, you know, where they used to go out in the street and they ask people about historical questions and, you know, history questions about the Civil War or the War of 1776. Actually started in 1774, and people don't even know this stuff. And there's college graduates and university people out there who don't even know their basic stuff. They just know what they were taught in a book, and that's all they know. They go home and watch TV. It goes in one ear, out the other. Sometimes they pick up on a few things. That's when they yell, "I have rights." Well, I mean, I watch a lot of video with people all the time going, "I have rights," and yelling at the cops, you know. And all right, we all have rights, but what is your right? Do you know your right? Tell me your right. And I've literally watched some of these videos where the cops arguing with people on the street when these people tape these videos, and the cop will sit there and say, "Okay, explain your rights to me." And if you actually knew the statute codes and administrative rules he has to go by, you explain it in his terminology, oh shit, he's got it. But when you're not explaining it in his terminology, that's where he's claiming his authority over you. Because you're not claiming what he knows by his administrative rules that he has to follow. So, I mean, when you do a personal property or property damage or, you know, theft, injured a man or woman or child for your own personal liability because you are liable, and that's the one thing that people got to realize. It's like I'm dealing with this, and I'm putting this letter out for the sheriffs, dealing with the personal and property rights and all that stuff. And that's what I want to get out to the general public, so people know the truth. I'm reading their administrative rules. They wrote it, I quote it. They wrote it, we quote it. And so when we're quoting their administrative rules, they have to go by their administrative rules, technically. And if they're not, you have to file on them. And that's not filing a wham-wham complaint. You're filing an affidavit of fact, your standing, your circumstances, and making your stance. And that includes when a cop takes your kid from DHS. He stole your property. That's called, kidnapping, holding for ransom, personal financial gain for him, the corporation he's working for, the judge, the caseworker. Everybody's getting a paycheck out of that. That's called federal funding fraud. Because we're paying for a service that you and I are not getting. So how difficult is that for us when we start putting these pieces together and start going, no, shit, now we have rights. So when it comes into this going through that, you know, I'm fighting for my child. Okay, are you fighting for your bloodline? Can you prove you're lawful? And if you're a legal citizen, yes, so long as you're paying your administrative fees to be in this country, you have basically more privilege than people who have privilege because you are following our codes of administrative rules. And I hate to say it to all those, well-wishers or whatever, people who are negative thoughts out there, they have to be protected. They have to be backed up. And I agree with that. And I would back up an immigrant when it comes down to their kid, which I have done. Which I have done in the past on a couple cases. But I want to make sure that if I'm doing it, I want to make sure that man or woman knows the Constitution, what's the purpose of that man or woman in this country. You know, one thing I learned a long time ago, never trust anybody. Never trust anybody. See, that's the one thing that when you realize that you doing that, and the only one you can basically trust yourself, so long as you're not a con individual. Because con individuals usually end up conning themselves, and they end up screwing themselves over. We all know that. We've all seen it. We all have seen the walk of life in that. Nothing new. So, like I said, I'll be getting this thing out with the structure of this letter. We'll have it posted up here in the next few days on new.org and trackers. Take a couple days to get everybody's posted up. And that's just the sheriff's. Now, I haven't done the other ones yet. And for you to be an injured party, that's under Title 18 USC 3771, Corpus Delicti. So when your child is taken, now you're an injured victim. But you have to prove that you are not a culprit that harmed that child. That's a fact. That's what one has to do. You have to prove this stuff. If you don't prove it, are you truly the injured party or not? You know, I mean, some people shouldn't have kids, as far as I'm concerned. But some who do have the right. And once you give birth to that child, or born that child, birth is the banking structure, born is life. And you can read that under Title, USC 1, Section 8. A child is not alive until it breathes air, until it's alive. When it's in the mother's body, that's a parasite that's eating off of the woman's inside until she decides to get rid of it, one way or the other. In a sense, that's one way you can look at it. And the other point is, always look up your Wall Street structure of who's banking on your birth certificate. So your birth certificate bond, and you go after it. And I do suggest that, you file identity theft on any cop that took your license, any cop that wrote you a ticket. That's identity theft. That's for personal financial gain of his. And so that's the one thing you got to look back. And it's like, if people want to get into it, the IRS and all this stuff, people go, I get a tax credit for my kid and I need all this money. Well, the IRS ruled unconstitutional in 1935 by one Supreme Court of one United States nation, Nations versus the United States of Constantine, and that court case is 296 USC 287. They already ruled that the taxes are unconstitutional. But see, the thing is that you think you're getting more money at the end of the year in your taxes. Well, some might, but the average, you're not getting more money back. You're just getting what they took out of your check. See, they worked off that interest. They worked off your insurance fund and all that. That's what they do with the babies. And see, and then when a baby is born or still dead or dies in birth or something like that, or doesn't become born, or when it was born, it dies after being born, they create a birth certificate, stamp it, then they write death certificate, then they file that, collect on the bond if it's born more than, I think it has to be living more than 72 hours before they collect on it. Where I read in one of the administrative rules, but I can't precisely say on that one. And so that's the one thing that, when it comes down to that, you got to look at these things. How they're making their money. How are they succeeding off of you? How come we're not allowed to write off our water electricity bill? I remember in the 70s, people were doing that. I remember when people would go in to different public utilities and go in and just sign things and walk out without paying them. When I was a kid, I went through it. I didn't comprehend back then, but I wish I would have learned and sat down and went around them back then, because I would have been more prepared today instead of backtracking 30 years, but that's the way it has to be, or that's the way it turned out to be. So these are things that we have to go through. And so, and then that's the one thing too. If you pay a fine or anything like that, file a 1099. You're paying a court fee. File a 1099. You're in divorce court. File a 1099 on a judge, the attorney, everybody in that, the clerk. Because by law, they have to pay taxes. because they're getting a de facto debt note under the 1933 Bankruptcy Act that was created by fictitious paper. See, is realizing what the Public Law 192 Law, Chapter 10, 48 Stat 112, and Public Law 73-10, 40 Stat 411 of Congress means. This is the one thing that this stuff was not given to you by education. That's why we're bringing this stuff to you. Not argue. See, once you stop arguing and you start putting your feet on the ground, especially give it back to them paper where it hurts. When, that's the one thing that I do suggest, that, do a contract between you guys. Don't go in the state and get a marriage license. Because the minute you get a marriage license, you turn your constitution rights over to the state. You say you're not a living man or a woman. You say you're a dead entity and the state controls you. And that's what's happening today. We are living this. We are literally living this right now around the structure around us. And it is frustrating. Yes, I agree. And it's angry. And I can see how women will get upset. Oh, don't forget, let me give you the OMB number for an affidavit and by court filing, by letter he got back from the court. But the OMB number is 1545-2139. That's their identification number, corporation. That's the same thing, an OMB number as your Social Security number. That's a child's Social Security number. So, and that's up to you to give the child the responsibility for a Social Security number, but you can't do it until the child's 18 and make a rational, reasonable decision. And if you do that, and if you don't do that, we all lose. So don't forget, United States, what I was telling you earlier, the federal corporation. All right? It's all a corporation. That's 28 U.S.C. 3002. Define 15 in the United States means a federal corporation is basically, and it's a corporation by the folks. They're writing it off on your SB Strawbrand account. And that's what they're doing. They're paying that off because, see, when the British government went bankrupt to we the people, they had to come some way. And that's with Executive Order 2040. And technically, all immigrants are supposed to have birth certificate registration filings in this country. We the people are not. And that goes by native law. Oh, that's right, native law. Didn't we natives sign a whole bunch of treaties with all you foreigners that came to our country? And the treaties are superseding an order constitution, superseding statute codes and administrative rules. So when it comes to your bloodline, claim it. You got to be proud for your bloodline, where your heritage came from. Even though you might be an immigrant. You still got to be proud where you came from, but then you came to this country, so now you want to be an American. So, okay. But you're not an American until 5 generations. That's the one thing. Everybody says, I want to be an American. I mean, our terrorist governor, Kate Brown, I want to be an American. I'm an American politician. No, you're not. You were born in Spain. And you're a lawyer, and you have no right to be in governor, because Oregon State original Constitution says that the Oregon Constitution is basically the same as the federal Constitution with the British government. Remember, all states had a treaty with the British government. All treaties are done with the British government on the soil with Native Americans. Bloodline Native Americans. See, that is the one thing that people got to comprehend. We are bloodline. I mean, I know for a fact my family fought in the Civil War, And I'm still working on a true fact, but my facts are proven that my family even fought along George Washington. So, I mean, I know my family's been in this country for several hundred years. And that is the one thing that people need to comprehend. Separation of lawful bloodline versus legal citizen. I am not your citizen. I am no citizen. When a public servant asks me, well, you're a citizen, aren't you? Nope, I'm a lawful American. I'm a bloodline. I have rights, not privileges. And that is the one thing that people need to comprehend that. Need to comprehend that either you have rights or you're privileged. And if you don't comprehend that, I feel sorry for you. You got all these people going, well, I've been here. I was born here, so I'm an American. I was born on this soil. I was born on this land, so I have all these rights. No, you don't. That's been proven in the Supreme Court of the Ninth Circuit Court this year. And people, you gotta read your court cases when it comes up to this stuff. I mean, the men and women, you know, some of these decisions, they got to stand by the Constitution. They can do opinions, but remember, a judge's opinion is an opinion. It's like a diaper. It needs to be changed regularly, which opinions are. You know how that works, even in your own home. So how do you participate to get your child back? All right? Simple. It's one of those things that are that simple. And so when you are doing this stuff, how to get your child back, you need to do your bloodline research. You need to file on that child that that's your personal property. Okay, so you have another individual that has the same bloodline in that child that's entitled to 50-50 of that property. So that way, I think that, you know, visitation rights are 50-50, straight across the board, end of story. But when a kid gets in his teen years, gets to make his own decision. What is that in the state of California? At 12 years old, a child gets to decide who it wants to live with. And, you know, I think that is true to a point, because it depends on the parent, you know. And some people say, well, one parent does this and does that. You know, I'm not going to be specific, because you get into specific, everybody says, well, they're smoking or they're having drinks and they're doing this. Excuse me. Who gives you the right to dictate to somebody else's religious belief because of your religious belief or your way you were taught to think? Men and women are entitled to do what they want so long as they don't cause personal and property damage to another individual. That's why when it says, oh, people are upset, well, I can't smoke around my kid and all this stuff. Well, see, cigarettes is one of those things when they're smoking around a kid, can it or can it not? I mean, I grew up with parents that smoked around me. Most of us did. Oh, that's right. We can't forget back in the, 50s, 60s, and 70s when the propaganda came with cigarettes that was taught in a TV commercial. Well, smoking is my constitution right. It gives me a right, so I have a right to smoke. And remember, that was the court case that won the $373 million lawsuit against the tobacco company. It gives you the right, but tobacco was one that has been laced with so many chemicals that it causes the problems, because prior to it being soaked down with the other chemicals, it doesn't cause harm. Nobody knew about, cancer or the smoking or anything like that until, basically it came in the late 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And you can't say hemp causes anything because there's never been any medical proof of an OD on hemp or hemp oil or anything of hemp. Okay? I mean, it's like even some of your wild weeds that you got in the backyards in your property create actual morphine. Break the leaves open. It's actual liquid morphine. And we do have these things. This is what the natives knew years ago growing up. What plants caused this? What plants cured this? What plants helped out? Oh, that's right. Sometimes they were called medicine men or medicine women. And I agree with that. And some modern day medication I have to agree with because I went through something July 8th for 8 days on life support, or 6 days, I mean, on life support. And without the modern chemicals, I don't think I would be here. So it is one of those learning what, why, and how. And that's with your children's case. What, why, and how are you going to handle it? If you go out and scream in and get all the attention you want, bring all the powers around you to be, but when you cannot sit there and defend yourself, say what, why, and how, and this is what happened, and not get into the tit-for-tat stuff with your relationship, okay, because your relationship, you want to keep that out. You want other people to speak on that. You don't want to speak on that because you don't want to muddy the soil. So you got to think about that, how people think, especially if you're going through a court case. How are this person, this man, this woman, this individual, how are they going to think? And when you go back, that's like the Roman spear that's on the flag in some of these courtrooms. And if you notice some of the courtrooms throughout the country, these flags are starting to disappear. Because not only I, but other men and women across the country over the last 10 years, 8 years, have filed on this flag. We've actually got more information on the flag again. We're trying to get more and more right now. But you got to remember that this is an underground corporation, or what do they call that? Oh, they would call that the devil, the Illuminati, or whatever you want to call it this week. And see, the thing is you go back to the devil, the book, the Bible, whatever you want to go back and forth on these issues, what are you conquering? What are you accomplishing? When you really think about it, what are you accomplishing? Do you have your property in your possession? How do you get your property? You have to file grand theft auto. You have to file kidnapping, theft charges. Okay? And then all of a sudden, when you start waking up and you start going through this other change and you start doing things what they would call legally. Remember, the word legal is Roman, and that comes from the British Vatican. That comes from the British government, the corporation, Article 1 court. And to get an Article 3 court, you have to file for it. You have to do the research on the judge. You have to get his oath that he took to the Constitutional oath. You have to know that the court is binding to the original Constitution courtroom that was formed in 1789. That was not British in this country when it was formed. So anyhow, I've been going on. Why don't we open up the floor for comments, see if anybody would like to add anything, what we're going through on this one. The floor is open here.
All participants are unmuted.
Okay, we'll just leave it open. But also, too, common law, if you go back to common law, that somebody keeps referring to, and I get this all the time, common law comes back from England, and common law was where the Pope decided by the community or the village, the decision by the people of the village. So if the village said kill, he had to kill. If they said let him live or her live, they had to let him live. So when it comes to common law, I like the law of the jungle that a.k.a. former President Senior Bush stated. In his presidential speech, do you want the law of the man to participate and take care of you? Or do you want the law of the jungle? That was his big speech, and nobody comprehended what the hell he was talking about. He's talking the law of man, Christ, the Bible. Your courtrooms today are run religiously. You get to decide. Oh, you don't get to decide. A man or woman gets to decide your fate, not a jury. The man of that law is not a jury deciding. That is a man or woman whose financial gain is in his financial or her financial best interest at the time of the court. Or public outcry or public decision. We got to look at these things when these things go through and happen. That's the whole point. Realizing when these things happen and what the purpose is. Comprehending what, why, and how. And once we do that, we move further. we get along further. And so I'm still going to be getting these letters out this weekend or this next few days. Because remember, I got to put a little cover letter into it. I still got to email them to each individual sheriff. And not only that, it's going to their county commissioner and their legislator too. I got to include them into it and their local paper too, so that way people get to know the truth, have the truth, and see the truth. And so that is the whole point of all this stuff, is so we can get this out. And that's the other thing too, is, look up parental rights and liability on the internet. It's on FindLaw. Look at these things. And, they created the legal system to terminate your property rights. That's like on your property, your house. See, when you have a mortgage, you don't own the land at that point. You're still leasing it from the corporation, the British government, your elected and public servants. When you pay that off, get out of the system. Be smart. Don't make a loan on that property. Make sure that property can never be liened on. The property cannot be liened on. It cannot be taxed. And I've got the writings up, and I'm still dealing with that. And I haven't finished a couple more procedures I need to do on that one, on my personal issue. But also, too, I'm finishing up this letters with the sheriff and the county commissioners, and I've got other things I'm working on, too. So, I got, a lot of things I'm bouncing around and still recuperating from basically deceased 4 weeks ago. That was an interesting experience going through the hospital and going through all that. And that's one thing I actually wouldn't even suggest that for my worst enemy. Because my worst enemy, I would much rather be simple, sweet, and plain. That's the way we want. We want compassion when it comes down to things like that. So, when you got these men and women who are doing serious crimes, hey. But we shouldn't have them on death row for so many damn years playing this legal game so all these attorneys can make millions of dollars, corporation money, off of you, the people. And that's what they do. So, anyhow, anybody got anything they would like to bring up tonight? Well, hearing that, and nobody, so we'll get ready for tomorrow night, bring up some more. I'll get into this a little bit more in the child stuff tomorrow with some more laws, and I'll be having them up so I can read them. We'll get them posted up, too. And so, but this is the one thing, that once you comprehend how this stuff works, your court system works. There's people that get traffic tickets all the time, and they write a letter to the judge in that courtroom, and all of a sudden they don't hear from them. And sometimes, you don't want a letter of dismissal from the judge, but it would be nice if he sent you one. But, when you get that, you don't waste your time on a lot of those little things. But if you get an officer or public servant that is harassing and threatening you, you file a criminal complaint on him, just like you would do on any other man or woman that is making you under duress and making you fearful of your surroundings and your own personal life. So those are just things to bring up. So with that, I guess if nobody's got anything to say, we'll call it an evening. And so I would like to thank everybody for joining us tonight. Hopefully some of the things I said that you were able to use, think about, go to our website. Facebook is United States for Elected and Public Employees Oversights. Civil Rights, Civil War, 1866, Lawful Bloodline Americans. Also, too, I do have the Recall Kate Brown up for the Governor of Kate Brown of the state of Oregon. Also, too, we do have new Oregon Trackers on Facebook, and our website that has a lot of lawful education on is new.Oregon Trackers. So please look at this stuff, pay attention, educate yourself, try not to get frustrated. And if you get frustrated and stuff like that, go have a couple. Relax, look at things, take another perspective, light one up if you have to. Think about it, let it go for that time, and then come back to it later. Sometimes people get stressed out. Don't let the stress, put so much heart shock to you. Just let the stress go away and then come back and reevaluate what your stress was about. And you already know what it was about, but just reevaluate it. What, why, and how it got you to that point. So with that, may the Holy Spirit bless you. May Mother feed you, take care of you, give you life. And may the Creator bless us all. I heard something there. I don't know. What happened to my producer? I didn't hear you.
Didn't hear me, huh?
Oh, now I can hear you.
Okay. Well, thank you for listening to the Disclaimers by Ed Johnston. It is Saturday, August 11th, 2018. We thank you for your patience with this new system of OBS and trying to get the show going nice and smoothly. And we'll see you tomorrow with Education by Ed.